Before we get to tonight's program, I want to thank my friends and colleagues here at the Abel who have made this most gorgeous theater available to us tonight. This room is one of the treasures of Los Angeles. The Abel is a membership organization created by women for women, and it enhances our lives with so many diverse cultural programs. And of course, they're so welcoming to Writer's Block and to me. The folks at the Abel want me to tell you that they'd love you all to join. They're a worthwhile organization. It's been around for 100 years, over 100 years, and if they took me as a member, I guarantee you, you'll have no problem. Now for tonight. While reading Werner Herzog's wildly entertaining new book, Man Against God and God Against All, it occurred to me again and again that his own story and his films are inextricably linked. I said so many times while reading this, well, this or that explains his relentless exploration of people thrown into a situation shockingly out of their element, or of men and women probing extreme situations, impossible situations, epic challenges, danger and dread. It's through Werner's own vignettes that we can understand how he came to make his larger-than-life films. He's been poking the bear all of his life. The stories of his childhood adventures left me certain that it's sheer luck, or notwithstanding that title, Man Against God and God Against All, even a touch of divine providence that he survived at all. And one question he poses in the book describes so much about his oeuvre and our world. How can something unimaginable be possible? Which is precisely why I love Werner Herzog so much. It's his relentless audacity and his lust for adventure as he brings to life the unimaginable. In this book, and in his films, time after time, he brings to life the unimaginable. Tom Bissell has published scores of short stories, among them Errol, which Werner adapted into his feature, Salt and Fire. Tom also writes screenplays and video games and wins prestige awards for travel and science writing. He's authored 11 books, at last count, fiction and nonfiction, and has written for Star Wars, Andor, among other shows. So here's what's going to happen tonight. Tom and Werner will chat. When they're finished, you can ask questions using a microphone that will pass around. And please stand up when we give you the microphone so that we can see you. Afterwards, Werner will sign copies of Man Against God and God Against All. He will not sign any memorabilia, so put it away. And he will not personalize, but he will sign. There are a few copies that he already signed upstairs just now, so if you want to grab one of those, feel free to exchange your unsigned copy, if you picked one up, for a signed copy. Remember, it's almost the holidays. And what better book for the holidays than Man Against God and God Against All? So, ladies and gentlemen, Werner Herzog and Tom Bissell.
Hello, everyone. How nice to see everyone here. Werner Herzog is one of the, I think, greatest and most unusual artists of, Jesus Christ, all time. We can say all time, right? I'm sure many of you know his films a lot. That's why a lot of you probably are here. But the last 15 years or so have given us like a really new angle on Werner. His nonfiction account of making his film Fitzcarraldo, The Conquest of the Useless, was published in 2009 and it instantly became one of my favorite books about filmmaking that I've ever read. His short and intense visionary novel, The Twilight World, that appeared last year. And now we have the excellent book we're here tonight to discuss, Every Man for Himself and God Against All, which is his first overt memoir, and it contains the following sentence, a sentence that might be the least expected sentence in the history of the German and English languages combined. Are you ready? I want to make a film with Mike Tyson about the early Frankish kings. So let's please give another warm round of applause to Werner Herzog. We're going to start, Werner's going to read like a really beautiful lyrical burst, and this book is filled with beautiful lyrical bursts of Every Man for Himself. And there's a series of vignettes or portraits called The Ballad of the Little Soldiers, which are notes that he took in 1984 on the border between Honduras and Nicaragua. And I think we'd start by Werner reading one of those, if you would.
Before I do that, I would like to thank you for doing this with me being partner in crime. We have been together partner in crime. I did a feature film based on one of Tom's stories. So I'm very grateful. We are not unknown to each other. And let me allow one remark about, as you spoke about Mike Tyson. Actually, in my memoirs, I describe an encounter with him. There was a film project and 5 attorneys and agents and so on. Both Mike Tyson and I somehow didn't feel that was the right environment, and we went out to the veranda and sat together and wanted to feel each other out. There was a documentary project planned which never materialized, but we spoke together, had an immediate rapport, and it turns out that he was very well read. In prison, he was for 5 years in prison, and he had vehemently, by the way, he admitted all his crimes. He was incarcerated or taken in by police. He was arrested 40 times before he turned 11. So you have to understand that, and he admits it all. And of course, as a juvenile delinquent for more serious things, he spent time in jail, became a boxer in jail, and was one of the most ferocious figures in any boxing ring ever. And he is a very mild-mannered, shy person and speaks with a lisp. And it turns out that he's very well read about the Roman Republic. We had a discourse about the Roman Republic. And then he comes up with early Frankish kings. So it's not a joke.
No, no, not a joke, everyone. It wasn't a joke.
Yeah. So he's a serious person, and I truly like him. And of course, when you mentioned that, yes, in the biography or in my memoirs, there are things that are not just event, but all of a sudden you will find musings about ski ramps, ski flying ramps, because as a very young kid I wanted to become world champion and fly. I always wanted to fly, and ultimately made a film on a great ski flyer, and it's called The Great Ecstasy of the Sculpture Steiner. And so all of a sudden the memoirs are interspersed with details about flying and ramps and techniques and certain systems. They are aerodynamic systems. Or you find musings about the so-called vanishing area paradox, which haunted me for 2 months and I really racked my mind, and there was actually a solution given on the internet, and I refused to go for the solution, and I wanted to solve it myself. And it turns out that the so-called vanishing area paradox is not a paradox, it's a fraud, it's a hoax. And it didn't dawn on me quickly enough. Normally you can probably find out in 10 minutes flat. It took me 2 months. And what I try to make a point that I have been a writer all my life. Since 15 I have written poetry. I have published here in the United States a short story back when I was 23. I published then books like Of Walking in Ice, in the mid-70s. So, and on and on. So I try to make a point. I'm a writer who happens to make films as well. So, and you would like to hear one example, an excerpt. I actually put a couple of ballads in it. They're actually in prose, not in verse form. And I read Ballad of the Little Soldier, number 5, and I remember that kid very, very well. He was something like 9 years old. Ballad of the Little Soldier, number 5. Gently, undistracted, he pushed the cigarette this way and that with the toe of his boot. The only way it could fall between the cracks into the sea washing around under the veranda of the bar was if he aligned it exactly. I noted that the soldier had just lit it and taken only 2 drags from it. Then he picked it up and carefully put it out on the table. Cuéntame algo, I said to him. Tell me something. No, nothing to say, he answered. He had his M16 leaning against the table next to him. He was too young to be a soldier. He looked very indigenous. His name was Palladino Mendoza, he said. A name exists forever, even if you are dead. We looked along the pier to the lagoon beyond, where a ferry had run aground. The propeller was stirring up sand. The only visible cargo on the flat deck was a small car whose driver was alternately accelerating and braking. There wasn't more than 2 yards of space. This happened a few times, and the ferry wobbled a little but remained stuck. Overhead was a wheel of vultures, black and ominous. There are too many stars at night too. This here is a war for children. Sleepiness settles over everything. There's the word bliss, the word yoke, turn up one's toes, 91. Gunfire alarmed me. The soldier Palladino Mendoza was gone. I didn't notice him leave. I next saw him on the pier amid more gunshots, closely spaced. I thought the firing was at the freighter at the end of the pier because a few men were crowding together, looking for cover. Following where they were looking, I saw a boy hurriedly pushing away his moped. Then, all alone on the pier now, I saw the soldier Palladino with his rifle pressed against his hip and emptying his magazine into the air. Everyone was looking at him. He wanted their attention. Then he calmly took his rifle in both hands and shot himself in the mouth. Since he had the muzzle in his mouth, the shot this time sounded like no shot I have ever heard. As though sitting down, he lowered himself and simultaneously collapsed backward. Another little soldier came crying toward me at the pier. I picked up one of the cartridges off the boards, still hot, knowing it wouldn't give me any information. The police chief came running up with drawn pistol and waved it around uselessly for a while. Now he too was standing there in the slowly drying blood, playing pocket billiards. His canine teeth are framed in silver. I saw that Palladino Mendoza had the ring pull of a Coke can on his finger. His brains were a yellow foaming mess, streaked with bright blood. The palms of his hands were turned upward. His eyes, too, were gazing upward, emptily into emptiness. He lay there quite tidily, his face collected, the storm inside him calmed. It started raining quietly in his hands, no longer sentient, caught some of the drops. Right by Palladino's feet were a few coarse, torn paper cement sacks. They were left there because they had absorbed moisture and had long since caked into gray, cracked chunks. A pig pretended to sniffle the concrete, but its eyes were on the corpse. It had tried to lick the pasty brains, and someone had shooed it away with a kick. That was ballad number 5. So.
I'd like to revisit something you just said about you're a writer that happens to make films. In one of your journals in 1984, you wrote, "It is only through writing that I become myself." And this is well when your film career was, making you a massive figure in world cinema. And yet, the prose was never the main event publicly. But I know you've always been a devoted diarist and a voracious reader. And you published stuff, but like suddenly in the last few years, like there's all these books are just exploding out of you. And I'm wondering, like, was it a creative lane change, or did you suddenly get the time to just devote to it?
Well, it's very hard to describe, but I always had the feeling that my prose would outlive my films. So that's one side. But of course, sometimes I neglected it because there were film projects coming at me with great vehemence. Same thing with the books I wrote. There's a great vehemence in it that I couldn't avoid anymore. I wouldn't duck into the trenches anymore. And so I did have some time during COVID, and I wrote this novel about the last Japanese soldier who surrendered 29 years after the end of the Second World War, Hiro Onoda. And we knew each other and had a very intense, immediate rapport with each other. And based on the conversations with him, I wrote The Twilight World. And it went very quickly because the text in a way was in me all the time, dormant, and I only had to write it down. I could have written it down 15 years ago or 10 years ago. And then I was done with the book, and I was at the window and looking out, and my wife said, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "I don't look at anything. I don't see anything." And she says, "What are you thinking?" And I said, "I'm not thinking about anything, nothing. I'm just here and standing and staring." And she says, "Well, you seem to be warmed up in writing. Why don't you continue right away with write about your life? It has been in me for so long," and then it became very easy. And I wrote it also very quickly. And there was no second draft or no corrections. And fact-checking took much longer than writing the book itself.
Does writing books give you something that the highly, obviously, collaborative and often incredibly frustrating act of filmmaking doesn't? Is there something you can crystallize to describe that what it provides for you?
Well, it's a more direct sort of expressing what's in me. There's only a white sheet of paper, but today I would write on a laptop. And I'm not afraid of white paper, empty paper. So sitting here at venue that is called Writer's Block, I'm misplaced here. I do not know what writer's block is. I think you don't know either, because your output is quite intense. But did you ever have writer's block?
Not block in the sense that I can't write, but block in the sense that everything I write stinks. And that's different. That's a different frustration.
Yeah, in a way unknown to me. So, and anyway, but it was easy to write it because...
Ouch.
No, come on. No, because I've carried all my life with me for now until my age now, and I've turned 81. And I was totally and absolutely convinced I would not see my 18th year of my 18th birthday. And I describe it very early in the memoirs, an event out in the ocean near the island of Crete in Greek. And it was a moment of illumination, very strange that sometimes young people have that experience, like the reformer Martin Luther, age 19, I think, is out on an open field, and a thunderstorm arrives and a bolt of lightning hits only 50 feet away from him into the ground. And for him, that was the moment of where he apparently became known with his own destiny, and where he changed into becoming, I think he was already a young monk, but think on his own, act on his own, think about and observe what is going on with Catholic faith, what is going wrong. It was palpable for him, and similar to me, that I had a time where, very, very short period of time, where I had the feeling, like in a strange illumination, that I was made known with my own destiny. And it was the same time I started to travel on foot. And that was when I was 14, 15. Same time when I started to write poetry, and when I started to develop projects for movies.
So this is a wonderful segue to what I wanted to ask, because one of the things that really struck me reading your book, and what might surprise some of your fans in the audience here, was the number of things that you've written about and made films about. A lot of them originate in your teens. Like, you first hear about Aguirre, the Spanish conquistador Aguirre, when you're in your teens. Your first encounter with the caves at Lascaux was in your teens, and you wound up making a movie about it decades later. I mean, you first met Klaus Kinski in your teens. And it reminded me of a line from the recently deceased poet laureate Louise Glück. I don't know if you know her work, but she's a wonderful poet. And in a poem called Nostos, she wrote a line that I think about all the time. This is the line. We look at the world once in childhood. The rest is memory. And I assume you think she was onto something with that line.
Well, I would not fully agree with her experience, because I have not stopped looking. I have been in awe all my life and out for new horizons and surprises. I've done things that I had not anticipated a few hours before, and suddenly something comes at me and I go for it. And until today I make my discoveries, and I still shape my prose, and I still shape my stories, and it probably will never leave me. Memory, of course, is also there, but memory is deceptive. And I also write about memory because whenever there is something I doubt about my memory, and my brothers, for example, who proofread my memoirs, and I couldn't fully figure out, I say, here I may have exaggerated in my memories the danger awaiting me. It was a love story, my first great love in my life, and it ended in a very dark way because she married my own cousin, and returning from her honeymoon, she eloped with me for a few days. Yeah, no, it's well. If you friends of mine ask me, we'll hear everything about your love life. My answer is no, you will not. So, but I mentioned this one case, and I brought her back to her family, and she had 3 brothers, or I describe it, probably 4 brothers who threatened to kill me if I showed up. And probably I say, my memory makes the danger bigger than it actually was. It may have been only 3 brothers. And I think the 3-brother version is a more accurate. I can't fully testify to it, but of course you do a lot of fact-checking, and you look that no stone is unturned. And it's very strange because I've spoken about creating truth in literature and in filmmaking where facts are being modified for the sake of discovering a deeper stratum of truth. So, and of course, when you do memoirs, you better be accurate with the facts. And in many cases, things are doubted. People, you see it on the internet, they think that I did not move a ship over a mountain, a steamship. That must have been all digitally done. Or, well, fact is, and the truth is, I moved a ship over a mountain, and I hypnotized a whole cast of actors. It's all documented, and it's all there. You can see it on the screen. You can see it described in statements by others. And of course, all the bigger things that I did out there had a lot of people around. You see crew members, actors, you just name it. So you can't make it up. It has too many eyewitnesses, and they would come forward.
So there are actually Fitzcarraldo truthers out there? I didn't know that.
Yes, there are. Also for the film about Timothy Treadwell, Grizzly Man, you will find it in the internet. You cannot go that close to a grizzly that you touch the face of the bear and hug him and sing a song to him and tell him how much you love him. It can only have been done in digital domain. And it's not, those shots were real, and Timothy Treadwell was eaten by a real bear, and his girlfriend was also eaten by the same bear, and it's documented. But you have a wide range of people out there who have been very much into the internet and into the digital world, where they have only secondary experience with reality. None of them has been arrested, but I have been. None of them has been shot at seriously. I mean, not the one where I was shot here in town. It was insignificant because it wounded me only slightly, and it was captured. It was caught on tape. So you can deny it and doubt it. Yeah? Doubt it until you are blue in the face. I was shot, period.
You opened the door here, so it's well known that like so many crazy things have happened to you. Some of them of your own doing, some of them accidental. And I've always wondered if people who have such, quote, great material, which a lot of writers would do anything short of earning it to have all of your great material, Do you consider yourself like a person, a sort of an electromagnet for the unusual, or do you just sort of calmly say, yeah, obviously another strange thing happened to me, and
Well, sometimes out of the blue, and it's a statistical anomaly that I ran into certain things that you couldn't expect. Yes, that happened, but I've always been curious. I've never been a coward. I've always followed my vision, and sometimes my vision would take me into, let's say, a civil war in Nicaragua, or it would have taken me into an area where you should better stay at a good distance, volcanoes. And I've been fairly close, and actually the title photo of the memoirs was taken on the rim of a volcano. And a very expert volcanologist, Clive Oppenheimer, with whom I've made 2 films by now, he said to me, it looks calm, because the last 3 weeks it was regular and calm when slabs of glowing lava were ejected. So, and I said, can we go closer? He said, we better put on some heat-resistant suits, some sort of silver suits.
which you are wearing on the cover here.
Yeah. And we descended to a second level of very close to the very volcanic event. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, there was a much heavier explosion than anyone had anticipated. So in such a case, you flee as quickly as you can. And of course, I was full of soot, and I was sweating, and took off my helmet, and Clive Oppenheimer said, stand still for a moment, I'm taking a photo. So that's now here. And I like it, I like the photo because it shows I'm not in a studio, and I'm not having a, let's say, my own van, my own place where I could retire. I never have that. So I'm very much physically there. And because of that, sometimes danger is close. And since I'm a professional, I try to avoid danger. And I'm very good in assessment dangers and risks. I'm really good at that. That's why I'm still here. And that's why in 80 or so films, not a single actor, not one, not a single actor ever got hurt. Crew members with me, yes, and I, yes. But we took educated guesses and clear decisions. We are going to do it. We will take the steamship through the rapids, and we will be on after we had filmed it from the shores. We decided we will have some cameras on board and do it once more. And pretty much there were six men with me, and they were all somehow injured. Not seriously, but they were injured.
You talked about technology a moment ago. Films, of course, are a highly technologically dependent art form. But there's a passage in your book that really hit me pretty hard. You grew up in Bavaria, in a defeated nation crushed under the weight of one of the most vicious wars ever fought. You didn't have running water. You didn't have TV. You had no radio. You had very little to eat often. And now, as you put it, you live in a world in which robots send you emails. And this is what I wanted to read to you. I can hardly imagine, you write, that future generations will experience such density of change in a single human lifetime. And reading and writing are, of course, very ancient technologies. They're also largely unimprovable technologies, try as we might. And I wonder if that's part of what draws you to them so strongly.
Yes, of course, I'm somebody who reads. And to young aspiring filmmakers who ask me for advice, I give them one single advice: read, 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 read. So I'm into that very much. And of course, my experiences in the world are equally equally strong, like traveling on foot. It has informed my worldview, and certain physical tasks that I had to perform for the sake of a story put me very deeply in contact with a very physical world. And when you are saying, I have lived through many shifts in technologies, I mean in one single lifetime, in my single lifetime, normally you undergo only one shift. For example, young people today go from the pre-digital era, pre-internet era to the internet era. But I have seen the village crier with a bell and shouting, hear ye, and would invite people to come to the mayor's office and somehow register their kids for school. And I have seen then television much later in my life. I did not know that cinema even existed until I was 11. And I saw television, radio, all the means of communication. And I saw the internet arriving. And now I see artificial intelligence arriving all in one lifetime. Same thing with agriculture. I've seen pre-industrial hand agriculture, cutting the hay and with a fork turning it over until today's gigantic cornfields in the Midwest where the harvesters are going in formation and they are not steered by humans anymore. They sit in the cockpit, but they have 3 screens and they are GPS guided. And I have seen me who has seen pre-industrial agriculture, I've seen robotic agriculture, robots who select the seeds and plant the seeds and water them and turn off and on the light, harvest and package it ready for the supermarket. That's all. I've seen it in my lifetime, all of it. So that's unusual. And in this respect, I'm kind of unique, and other generations have not gone through that.
You also write in the book, I think this is a direct quote, the 20th century in its entirety was a mistake.
Yes, I do believe so.
How are you feeling about the 21st? How are we doing?
Well, we just have started it. We are 23 years into it. Let's see what happens, but there are clear things coming at us. And I have spoken about it more than 40 years ago, that with the increase of means of communication, and at that time it was fax and telexes and radio and you just name it, and now cell phones and all this, with a massive increase of tools of communication, we become deeper, we will slide deeper and deeper into solitude. The strange thing, it sounds like a paradox, but it is not. And you can tell with young kids who have grown up with their cell phones and social media and have only derived their experience in the world through the media and through likes and through comments on social media. They are deeply, deeply, deeply solitary. There's a deep solitude, a philosophical solitude. They are not isolated. You know, if you have a cell phone and you are caught in a snowdrift in Minnesota in the middle of nowhere, you can still call for help and a snowplow will come and locate you and find you. You're not isolated, but you are deeply, deeply philosophically, existentially solitary. In the 20th century, because of these tools of communication, will be the century of solitudes. That's one of the things coming at us, and we can see it since 40 years.
I'd like to talk about your style a bit and how it endures across the genres you've worked in. I think people tend to assume style is technical. It's like how someone does something. But I think style is actually spiritual. It's what you notice, not how you notice it. And you are such a great noticer.
Yeah.
And I have a passage that I'd like to read from Conquest of the Useless, which is one of my favorite things you've ever written. I will get the mic right, trust me. You're in the jungle in Making Fitzcarraldo, and you write this: outside in the darkness, 4,000 frogs are crying for a savior. The frogs have lowly thoughts and carry on lowly research. I wish a taxi would come and take me somewhere. Yet not for anything in the world would I want to dream others' dreams. You said before that you think your prose will outlive your films. And when I read a passage like that, I really think you may be correct. But I feel like just the poetry of being in the state of despair you were in when you wrote that journal entry, and noting the frogs, their lowly research as they cry out for their savior. It's just so indicative to me of how the unusual places you go to for detail. And it seems to be like on a very similar level that your films and your prose, you're just attracted to weird places. I wonder if you could speak to that.
Well, I think it's, I'm very glad that you as a writer and a poet are saying that. Style you cannot adopt, you can mimic it at best, but it's something that is informed by the subject, by the story itself, or by the circumstances. And it's style that actually will create a longer survival of the books, because the events, they're ephemeral, and many other people had astonishing lives. I'm not the only one. Everyone has an astonishing life. So there's nothing exceptional about it. But style itself, when I look, for example, at the short stories of Joseph Conrad, stories like Typhoon, there's hardly any event at all. Typhoon is just waiting for a cataclysmic event and nothing else. And it's some of the finest prose that was ever written. And I think that's why I believe that my prose and my poetry will live longer than my films, for example.
Well, I think a lot of that too has to do with your voice, and I mean that in both senses, like the style of your voice, but also just the tenor of it. Like reading your book, I hear you in my head, this capital V voice, and I love it so much. And I'm sure a lot of people here do too. I mean, I'm sure we can all do a show of hands. How many of us have a Werner Herzog impersonation in our back pockets? I'm sure it is a thing. You know it's a thing. You talk about it in the book.
And there are many, and I don't care.
Obviously, your artistic voice is mirrored by your literal speaking voice. And what I love about it is it's warm and it's distant. It's grounded, but it's also very mystical. And you talk, there's a wonderful passage in the book where you talk about how you discovered that you have this stage voice, and you realized almost instantly that it was a thing of real power. I wonder if you could tell that story.
Well, I discovered it when I was forced to speak my own commentary for an early film in the mid-70s, The Great Ecstasy of the Sculptor Steiner, about the ski flying, about the greatest of all. And he was a sculptor, or he is a sculptor and artist as well. And not only did I have to speak my commentary, I had to show up in front of the camera and do the chronicle of events, and I hated it. But afterwards I thought, yes, if I move behind the camera completely, I never do that again, to be on camera in a documentary. And somehow I found my voice, not the full performative voice like in commentaries. There was also a second element, hypnosis. I had to do hypnosis myself because I had a professional hypnotist for doing the hypnosis, and he was such an insipid, unbearable bozo, such an idiot. I mean, phenomenal. He stylized himself as having specific powers, and with these powers he could attract a cosmic aura, all this new age bullshit. He could attract the aura and then radiate it on to subjects and put them under hypnosis. And I said, I cannot take that a minute longer, and fired him. So now I find myself with 22 people whom I invited for a casting session, and I had to do it myself from now. Of course, I had read in the literature quite a bit, and I observed the hypnotist, but there's a specific type of speech, a hypnotic, suggestive kind of speech, and a voice. And this combined with being the inner chronicle of things has created a voice that's distinct. But people always believe it's a voice. It's much more, I could describe, is the content, because I wrote the texts myself. And for example, at the end of a film about volcanoes, Into the Inferno, my voice says something, and I wrote it, of course, myself, musing about everywhere on this planet, this glowing magma tries to burst forth. But, and it is phenomenally and completely indifferent to the plight of man, to what we are doing out there. And I'm saying completely indifferent to scurrying roaches, retarded reptiles, and vapid humans alike. So, beautiful. And you see, when you write a text like that, you better proclaim it well, which I did. And nobody has done that yet in a film for National Geographic. They are too organized, too unpoetic, too pedantic, too much the accountant's truth. And I'm not into that.
I'm going to ask Werner a couple more questions, and I think we can open it up to the audience after that. How does everyone think about that? At various points in this book, you discuss your reticence in discussing yourself, your pains, navel-gazing. I don't do introspection is my favorite quote of yours. And you write a lot about your mother, who sounds like a remarkable, formidable woman who taught you, to really avoid whining in a time of intense deprivation, I would say. But you changed your name early in your life. Partially, you write about trying to hide behind a persona. But the persona also became you in a weird sort of a way.
It's true. I mean, with my name, there's a confusion anyway, because my parents divorced, and technically, well, at the beginning, I had the name of my mother, but technically she wasn't divorced yet. And she's of Croatian origins, Stipitic. And then I thought when I knew I was going to make films, I thought, no, Stipitic, nobody can spell it forwards or backwards. It's gonna be awful. And I took the name of my father, who is unimportant for me, but my grandfather, also Herzog, the paternal grandfather, very important for me. So I said it should be Herzog, which legally is also correct. And not so much about hiding, but I had the feeling it's good that I had some sort of a recess, some sort of a niche where I could disappear into. So, and sometimes it's good to be anonymous. I wish I could have been anonymous most of my life. As a filmmaker, you can't. That's very difficult. Well, as a writer, you can.
I will remind you that when we met 18 years ago, and I profiled you for Harper's Magazine, the matter of your name change came up, and you told me you changed your name to Herzog to protect yourself from the cosmic evil of the universe.
In a way, yes, that's a far distant echo of my thoughts. Yes.
And I remember I got a
Correct.
very baffled query from the fact checker on that one. And I said, just ask him.
Yeah.
You also write how my publication and film releases render me vulnerable, breaches in a fortification that stands unprotected. And yet you've written this beautiful, gorgeous memoir, and this isn't a gotcha question, I promise, but can you talk about these simultaneous urges between public disclosure and maintaining a kind of psychic mystery to your audience? I mean, you say in the book you'd rather die than go to an analyst.
And better be dead than ever wearing a toupee. So, and I'm baldening, and so never ever will you see me with a toupee. Only when I'm dead, maybe somebody.
I hope no one here is wearing a toupee, because...
Yeah, but of course it's a dilemma between, you have to step outside with a film. You have to step outside with a book, even with the photo of you on the cover. And I try to find a balance. For me, memoirs are not necessarily a confessional. I'm not in a confessional. And I think the internet and the social media have bit by bit eroded the virtue of discretion. I still see discretion as a virtue, but today it's frowned upon, I think. Of course I have to step outside and I have to speak about things that have very, very strongly shaped my character. For example, a fight with my brother when I was 13 and I wounded him with a knife. And it was so catastrophic that from one moment to the next I knew I had to change something drastically in my life and not going to an analyst or whatever, right now, here and now. And it's a question since then of discipline. And much of what I've done was done by a very disciplined professional. I'm not a wild gun. I go wild in my fantasies, and I go wild in my projects, and I go wild in my prose, but I'm a disciplined professional. And the moment where I had to learn it from 1 second to the next is something I describe because it was important. So I had to lean out the window, but otherwise you do not hear about my women, only the women with whom I have children, and my wife, whom you know, with whom I live for 28 years. I've been very, very lucky. It's strange, men that I see around are all not as lucky as I am. So,
Werner writes very beautifully of the night he met his wife. She asked what he did, and he said he was a stunt coordinator for films. And true enough, you know.
yeah.
I think...
But please let me explain a little bit about it. I met her and I immediately knew during a dinner, I knew in a restaurant, I knew I want to live with her and no one else. And there were filmmakers and some stars and celebrities, and they all boasted about their careers in filmmaking. And she asked, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, unfortunately, I'm also one of those who is working in movies." And she asked, "Yeah, what do you do?" And I said, "I used to be a stuntman," which I actually did for some films. I used to be a stuntman, but now it's more coordinating stunts. And I also said, once in a while, I do other positions in filmmaking. I do other things as well. So it was not a complete lie. I didn't want to lean out the window. And when I immediately put my house in order, I was still technically married, but separated for 3 years already back in Vienna. And I came back. I gave everything away. My books, my apartment, my car, my clothes, my money. I had nothing left. And I returned and I passed through immigration, fine, I had a valid visa, and then customs, and they waved me through, and then the customs guy calls me back and he says, sir, where's your baggage? Did you leave it at the carousel? No, I hadn't left it at the carousel. I said, I have no luggage. And he says, on an intercontinental flight, everyone has some luggage. And as stupid as I was and conceited, I reached in my pocket and showed my toothbrush, my only possession, and landed me 6.5 hours in interrogations and backup checks. I was suspicious. But the point, Tom, was I wanted to show up at her doorstep. No status, no property, no a past, yes, I have had a past, fine, yes, I stick to it and I stand, but only me, nothing else. It's me and the toothbrush. Can I move in? She could, and I didn't know, she could have said no, but she didn't. So I'm a very, very lucky bastard.
One of my favorite parts of this book, and this is the last thing I'll say before we open this to the audience, one of my favorite parts of the book is this gorgeous chapter you write on the late, great Bruce Chatwin, one of your favorite writers, one of my favorite writers. He was a travel writer if you haven't read him. He was also a nomad in the best sense. You too are a nomad. You have a nomadic artistic sensibility. You have a nomadic life. And you've made a film, a great film about him called Nomad. So I saw your first movie when I was 20 years old. So I've been following you for most of my life, for 30 years. And I imagine a lot of people in this audience have been following you for just as long. And so to finish, before we open it up, are you conscious of all the fellow wanderers that are behind you?
Yes.
And if so, are you looking back at us, or are you marching ahead?
No, I'm very fond of those who travel on foot, and some of the great writers that I love have been on foot. And in Bruce's case, I met him when he was in the Australian outback. And I learned from the publisher that he was in the country. And I said, if he pops up, please try to make a contact between us. They gave me a phone number. He was in Adelaide. I was in Melbourne, and I called him and I said, please, can you detour via Melbourne on your way back? He did. And he knew about me. He had seen some films. And the most astonishing was I said, I do not know how you look like. He said to me, I'm tall and blonde, and I look like a schoolboy, and I wear a leather rucksack. And I saw him from half a mile away. I could say, this must be Bruce. And in his leather rucksack, he had 1 or 2 books, and among them, my book of Walking in Ice, when I traveled on foot from Munich to Paris, when my mentor was dying, and I wouldn't allow her to die coming on foot. And he had this on him. And later, when he died, he actually gave me his rucksack. He couldn't move anymore. He was dead already when I saw him, and he wanted to see my last film at that time about nomads in the southern Sahara, which I showed him bit by bit. And after each 10 minutes or so, he would lapse back into a coma and then come back up and have a lucid moment and keep watching it until he saw the entire film in bits and pieces. And he shouted out, I've got to be on the road again, I've got to be on the road again. And I said to him, Bruce, that's where you belong. And he looked at his legs and there were only bones left. And he said, but I cannot walk anymore. And there's nobody, I cannot carry my rucksack anymore. I'm too weak for that. And I said to him, Bruce, I can wear the rucksack. And he gave me his rucksack, and I still have it. And it's my of all the earthly possessions, it is my most precious.
Thank you, Werner Herzog, for wearing the rucksack.
So we can take some questions. There, one second. My daughter Lena, who's back here, and I are going to walk around with a mic. We ask with mics, and we ask that you stand. So, Tom, can we use your mic? Because there are only 3 mics.
Well, I suppose.
And if you need to yell or interject anything, we'll run and give you a mic, because you've earned it. Okay, so Lena, you come and get this mic. I'll do this side of the room, and Lena will do that side of the room. No, you go over there, because I'm lazy. Okay, first, the guy with the hat.
Sorry, I'm coming as fast as I can. Thank you. So Happy People is one of my favorite movies. And I understand you didn't make it, but you did something to it. So first of all, I want to know how you came upon the movie and what your involvement was in the movie, how you brought it to a broader audience.
Happy People is a film I stumbled in by utter coincidence. I visited a friend unexpectedly, and he just wanted to turn off his plasma screen, and there was something, and I said, no, I've come, please, this looks interesting, and I saw it, and then it was actually 4 films, each 1 hour, by a Russian filmmaker, Dmitry Vasukov. And I made a remark, and I said, the music is worse than any elevator music. The commentary is garrulous and really unnecessary and bad, and so. And the film is way too long. And I said, somebody should make a real film out of that for us, for the world, not only for Russia at that time. And my friend said to me, why don't you do it? And I said, yeah, well, that's a challenge. So we made contact with a Russian filmmaker, and I said to him, I would like to condense it into a 1.5 hour single film, write a new commentary, speak it with my voice, create music, and re-edit the entire thing. But I do not want you to be around. I do not want you to breathe down my neck. Can you take that? And he said, yes, sure, would be an honor. So I went to work, and that's a film now, Happy People, and it's about hunters in the Siberian taiga. Very, very beautiful, wonderful people out there in the wilderness. I love the film, although it's not really my film.
Over here.
Thank you for being here. I wonder, it seems that at this point in your life, very little can surprise you or faze you. I wonder, what has been your most recent source of surprise? Maybe it was a piece of art, something about human nature. I know it's a broad question, but I wonder, for someone who has seemingly been through it all, what is still surprising and novel to you at this point in your life?
Very recently, excuse me, some young writers and publishers got in contact with me, and they sent me a book of poetry which was created by artificial intelligence. The book is called I Am Code, and it is out since June. It's in the bookstores. And they said, read it, because it's astonishing poetry. And I read it on paper, and I must say, the real shock and astonishing, awe-striking, awe-inspiring thing is that some of the poetry is better than anything I have read in the last 20, 30 years. And they insisted I should speak the voice of the robot, which I did. And you can find the book as a printed book, I Am Code. Parallel to that, you can find me reciting the poems. It's close to 100 poems, a huge surprise. Or, for example, I was contacted by a brain researcher, one of the foremost. I got so excited that I didn't wait for finances to come in. I didn't wait for sponsors or some sort of whatever kind of money is out there for these kind of films. And I said, let's start right away. And it was like a road movie right after COVID. And it is called Theater of Thought. And it was every single station on this road was a complete discovery for me, a complete surprise. And I'm absolutely open for it. And the same way I've been completely open about discourse on truth, what constitutes facts and what constitutes truth, which is something we shouldn't try to define because philosophers are not in accordance about what it is, nor are mathematicians or so, but it's something out there, and I've been aiming at it all my life. And right after this, in June, I also wrote a new book, and it's called The Future of Truth. So I'm going out into wild new terrain, some of it, of course, known terrain for me, and I describe it, my encounters, my brushes with truth, but I go into artificial intelligence marginally because there are people who understand much more about it. But I'm completely open for anything that is awesome.
Thank you, Herzog. You make some great films. In the book, the Aguirre you conceived in the book is fascinating. I think that should be in the end, and the real Aguirre. And my question is, in the movie, there were the green and dreams. I mean, what is the movie about? And in the end, how do you conceive that end? Was it poetic, or was it? Imagine it's a great ending. It's fascinating how you got there.
You are referring to the end, which is in Central Australia, and all these pyramids of white sand, tens of thousands, millions, as if the entire planet was covered with it. Well, I knew about it. It was not complete coincidence that I ran into it. And of course, the mythology of the green ants is not a modified mythology of Australian Aborigines. I did not want to, and I spoke with some of the elders, and some of them, of course, are in my film as actors. And it was clear they were acting, and they play roles. And it was an exchange of services. They earned money, for example. And I said to them, I do not want to mess with your dreams, with your dream time, with your mythologies. You know what? I'm going to invent a mythology of myself. The story or the mythology of the green ants that have their place where they dream. And this place is in danger of bulldozers who are clearing the terrain for a uranium mine or something like that. So, and all this plays hand in hand a deep mythology combined with landscape that is apparently not from this planet anymore and not from our time anymore. So I think it was a good choice, and it's very kind that you remind me of that. Thank you.
Right here.
Yeah, I was very fortunate that 30 years ago I was at Bayreuth and I saw your production of Lohengrin. I've seen a lot of opera, but that contained the single most amazing scene that I've ever encountered, where Senta's world literally turned upside down. And I'm wondering if you could discuss how you came about that idea and how you developed it and what kind of challenges there might have been to execute it.
I never volunteered for doing staging opera, and I have pretty much never watched an opera as a spectator, as an audience. I've listened to opera on recordings, and I love the music. And I was dragged into the Wagner Festival in Bayreuth and was invited to do Lohengrin. And I immediately said, no, I'm not going to do it. It's not my expertise. But the moment I stepped into it, and I had done one single staging before in Bologna, Dr. Faust by Ferruccio Busoni, and the grandson of Richard Wagner, Wolfgang Wagner, invited me, and he kept insisting, and I kept saying no. And he said, well, in his dialect, all of a sudden he said to me, do you know that little piece at all? And I said, no, Herr Wagner, I don't. And he said, I'm going to send you my favorite recording. At that time it was music cassettes. And I listened to it, and I almost caused an accident on the freeway. And I parked on the median in the middle and kept listening to the overture. And it was so big, so incredible, this music, that I said, I must do it. That's a challenge. I cannot duck away. And I called Wagner and I said, I'm going to do it. And I did unusual things since I did not know how the world of opera looked like. I did not know how stagings look like. I did not know of any of the trends. So my stagings were very unusual and somehow sticking out like a sore thumb. And you saw that, and for example, I have, if I'm the audience and there's a beach and an ocean rolling towards you, you probably remember that, an ocean rolling towards you. And what I did, I had about 60 or 100 tons of water on stage and a hydraulic system farther back there that went up and down and made the waves roll towards you. But all of a sudden, because of change of the music and change of the story, the ocean has to be gone. And we only had a very few minutes, and to suck it away was a very, very big challenge. But we did it. And so it's a world there which is very much a world of fantasy. And I kept saying to everyone, we will achieve opera if we do something very special, and that is the transformation of an entire world into music. And I think in Bayreuth, Lohengrin, we did it. But I'm not a real man of opera, although I have staged 15 or 20 or so.
On that side, Lena, you.
Hello. So you just mentioned the concept of truth, and there's a saying that is, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. So as such a great storyteller, and as someone who has, you said, seeking the truth, I wonder about if you could speak about how you're both pursuing the truth, but also pursuing a good narrative, and how those might intersect or conflict or work together.
Well, that's a very deep question, and I would like to spend another 20 hours here to talk about it. Let me make it very brief. I try to separate the quest, the deeper quest of my films for something unknown out there, the truth. I try to do it not completely fact-oriented. You see that on television in documentaries. Facts, 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 facts. And they do not inspire you, they do not illuminate you. Issue films, totally legitimate, do these films, but I'm after something else. And I do modify certain facts in films, but I always declare myself, here I have changed facts. And one of the things I have done is very much in line with my crown witness, whom I always quote, and that is Michelangelo with sculpture of the Pietà. He changes facts. He shows the man of sorrows. The man is 33, Jesus Christ, taken from the cross, 33 years old. But his mother is 17, maybe only 15. So question, did he try to give us fake news? Or did he try to cheat us, manipulate us? No, he tries to, by changing the facts, gives us a deeper truth, a deeper insight into the nature of Christ and into the nature of Mary, his mother. And this is a concept which is way before Michelangelo. Bernard of Clairvaux in the 11th century, who called for the Second Crusades into the Holy Land. He, in a prayer he, that we have until today, he says, Mary, daughter of your own son, daughter of your own son. And he addresses the Virgin Mary. So it's not nothing new. And quite often I do that. I give you one example in a film, Little Dieter Needs to Fly. A man who survived, is the only one, managed to survive and escape captivity by Viet Cong in Pathet Lao, Dieter Dengler. The first time I meet him, he opens the door, and in the first room where you put your boots and so, and your jacket, I see about a dozen oil paintings, all open doors. And I said to him, Dieter, this is interesting because you were in captivity. So here you have paintings, all open doors. And he says, what, how? And he, oh yeah, he notices it's all open doors or half open doors. And I said, yeah, did you buy it because of that? No, he says, no, there's a painter nearby, and he sold me each painting for only $10. And I bought 12 of them, and he gave me a real bargain. So, and then he says to me, well, now I see, yes, it's all open doors. And for me, freedom means being able to open and close a door. He was in handcuffs at night and during day and in medieval footblocks. And I said to him, Dieter, how about doing something about it? And we film him now coming to his house, opening and closing the door of his car, then walking to the house, opening and closing the door, opening and closing, then inside, opening and closing. And he sticks out his head and he says to the camera, you know what? It may look odd, but I love to open and close doors because this is real freedom for me. And it was invented and staged, but a staging that he fully accepted and fully understood. If we stage it, it will be something which will come across to an audience. And by the way, as it is the first scene in my film, audience will love you right away. And that's very hard. How do you introduce your leading character? And how do you have the audience on his or her side almost immediately? That's very, very hard. And it was by changing or inventing a scene which gives an essence of truth. That's what I do.
Wait, this... we have time for 2 more questions. Right here.
Good evening. Thank you so much for your wonderful catalog of films, this illuminating talk, and sharing that very moving anecdote about Bruce Chatwin. I carry his essay collection, What Am I Doing Here, wherever I go. It's one of the 5 books I take with me anywhere I live in the world or travel. My question is somewhat adjacent to the one that was posed about truth.
Can you speak up a little?
Oh, can you hear me now? Is this better? Okay. My question is adjacent to the one about truth, which is in this era of culture wars, I lived in a country with very serious censorship for 10 years, as well as all the other things going on in the world. What is your take on, how much or what can and should be the license of art? Things done in the name of art, things that we make as filmmakers, writers, etc. What is the license of art? Thank you.
I think you can do a lot in art, and if it comes to really inventing facts, if you completely invent things, you better out yourself and you explain in an interview, you explain it somehow. Or sometimes the facts in your film, I'm speaking of a documentary now, are so outrageously wild that you don't need an explanation. But of course we are facing a new era, and that's the era of fake news and manipulated truth and manipulated self. There are impersonators out of me, and you just name it. And how do we behave with that in art? Let's not speak about that. It's much more imminent what comes daily across on the evening news. And in my book about the future of truth, I try to give some simple advice. Trust no one, not a single one, no one. Don't trust CNN, don't trust BBC, don't trust Al Jazeera, don't trust the Chinese television or whatever, and don't trust the newspapers if it comes to important, let's say, political things, but dig into various different voices. Somehow you will get a composite yourself, and you will come closer to what is really happening out there. Just diversify your perspectives. And it goes very, very fast today. You can access the full speech of a pope within 20 seconds flat. What did Pope Benedict say in Auschwitz, for example? Very, very fascinating. And he was really put down for his speech. And I was curious, what did he really say? And I read it, and I was impressed by how he said it and what he said. So diversify your sources. And of course, not trusting, you cannot trust any email that asks you to pay, let's say, $14.99 for an extension of whatever insurance. It could have been, there's probably fraud. You always assume there's fraud. Young girls who make contact with a handsome boy have to suspect, could that be a predator much older who tries to make contact? You have to be suspicious. And we have a great achievement in our civilizations, and that is in criminal justice and in legal terms. You have to give the one who is accused as the kind of assumption of innocence, who is in court as a plaintiff, as a defendant. He or she is under the presumption of innocence. It's a wonderful achievement. At the same time, when it comes to the media, any form, internet, phone calls that could have been made by a robot nowadays or so, do not trust it at all. Do not trust anyone. There's a presumption of guilt out there. And if you adopt that, and young people do it casually and very easy, with great ease, they navigate and they sense the dangers and they do it right. I'm too old for that. I always have to verify and look into this and that and parallel sources. But otherwise, you see, you do not have to hate the internet for that. You have to learn to effortlessly navigate it. The same way like prehistoric man, hunters and gatherers, automatically eliminated the poisonous mushrooms, the poisonous berries. They somehow automatically would walk by and pick the good mushroom. And there were certainly not people who hated nature, because nature also has poison and dangers. They maneuvered effortlessly, I'm sure. And this kind of effortless assumption of guilt of fraud, of untrustworthiness you have to adopt.
Lena, you have the yeah.
I've read that you don't dream, and I was curious if you had any psychological curiosity about that or any fascination about those who do.
Dreams, yeah, it's odd because I do not dream, and the void of not dreaming I feel every day. Maybe, I don't want to be psychological, maybe this is one of the reasons why I'm making films and why I write books, to fill a void of fantasy that doesn't somehow work itself down during dreams at night. Could be, but I do not like psychoanalysis. Too many people are into it and it hasn't done good to most of them. Of course, there are clinical cases and serious cases. You better go to an analyst, but it's not for me. I rather come to terms myself by thinking about myself, thinking about what is going wrong, or speaking to my best friend or speaking to my wife. I don't want an analyst. I want sympathy and I want physical contact. I want to experience the warmth of somebody else who is not a professional listener.
Well, we're going to stop here, and I so appreciate Werner and Tom. I want to thank all of you for coming. Books are for sale over here, and Werner will sign over there. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.